Right now, somewhere in your house, a dog is staring at a closed door, waiting for you to open it. It never occurs to the dog to grab the handle. It never occurs to the dog that it could, and you don't think twice about that because that's just what dogs do. But stop for a second. What if it wasn't? What if the dog understood exactly how a handle works? Understood that you own the house? Understood that one day the house could be his? What if the crow outside your window wasn't just picking through your trash, but planning tomorrow's route based on which houses put the bins out early? We assume the gap between us and animals is enormous, permanent, safe. But what would actually happen if that gap closed? What if animals woke up tomorrow as intelligent as us? Not tame, not friendly, just as smart. This is a thought experiment biologists, philosophers, and science fiction writers have circled for decades, and the answer is a lot stranger and a lot darker than you'd expect. Let's start with the assumption most people carry around without examining it, that human intelligence is the finish line. The great chain of being, an idea inherited from medieval theology, literally ranked life on a ladder, with rocks at the bottom, plants above them, animals above plants, and humans just below the angels. That picture is centuries old, but it never really left us. We still talk about higher and lower animals like intelligence is a staircase, and we're standing at the top, looking down. Here's the problem. Intelligence isn't one thing. It's not a single number, and it's not a ladder. An octopus can solve puzzles that stump toddlers, recognize individual human faces, and squeeze its entire boneless body through a hole the size of a coin. And it does all of this with 2/3 of its neurons located in its arms, not its brain. Crows in the New Caledonia rainforest bend wire into hooks to fish grubs out of logs, a level of tool manufacturing that some researchers argue rivals early hominids. So when we ask, what if animals were as smart as us, we're already assuming intelligence looks like us. It might not, but let's run the experiment anyway. Say every animal on Earth wakes up tomorrow with human-level general intelligence, abstract reasoning, planning, language, the whole package. What changes first? Probably not conversation. Probably conflict. Because intelligence historically has not made creatures more peaceful. It has made them better at getting what they want. In 1960, a young researcher named Jane Goodall traveled to Gombe Stream in Tanzania to study wild chimpanzees, and what she documented over the following years shattered the comfortable idea that violence and warfare were uniquely human. She watched a community of chimpanzees systematically hunt down and kill the members of a splinter group over a period of 4 years, an event researchers later called the Gombe Chimpanzee War. These are animals that share about 98% of our DNA. Give them our reasoning, our planning, our grudges, and you don't get peace. You get strategy. But here's where it gets interesting. Because intelligence alone doesn't create war. It creates leverage. And the animal kingdom is already full of creatures with the raw processing power to make our lives very complicated, if only they had the follow-through. Consider the pig. Studies out of institutions including Emory University in the early 2000s, and later replicated elsewhere, have shown that pigs can learn to play simple video games using a joystick, controlling an on-screen cursor with roughly the same accuracy as chimpanzees. Pigs also outperform 3-year-old human children on certain object permanence and memory tasks. Right now, that intelligence is trapped in a body built for rooting through mud, with no hands, no written language, and a lifespan that ends for most farmed pigs before their first birthday. Give that same brain power the ability to plan long-term, to communicate abstractly, to understand its own situation, and the entire structure of modern agriculture becomes, frankly, indefensible to maintain by force. Because right now, that system doesn't run on animals being unintelligent. It runs on animals being unable to tell us, or each other, what they know. What the research doesn't tell you, because no one has ever gotten to test it, is what happens to human self-image the moment that gap disappears. In 1970, the psychologist Gordon Gallup Jr. developed what's now called the mirror test, placing a mark on an animal's body where it could only be seen in a reflection, then checking whether the animal touched the mark on itself rather than the mirror. Chimpanzees passed. So did orangutans, dolphins, elephants, and, in a 2019 study out of Germany, cleaner wrasse fish, a result that surprised and frustrated researchers who assumed self-recognition required a large mammalian brain. Every one of those passes chipped away at a line we'd drawn to keep ourselves separate. Self-awareness, once considered a uniquely human trait, kept turning up in creatures we'd spent centuries treating as scenery. Now imagine that line doesn't just blur. Imagine it disappears completely, and every animal on the planet not only recognizes itself in the mirror, but recognizes exactly what humanity has been doing to it. There's a reason science fiction keeps returning to this exact premise, and it's rarely a happy one. Pierre Boulle's 1963 novel La Planète des Singes, Planet of the Apes, imagined intelligent apes rising specifically because humans grew intellectually lazy, outsourcing their thinking to machines until the apes simply overtook them. It wasn't really a story about animals getting smarter. It was a story about what happens to a species that stops paying attention to its own advantage. That's the quiet, uncomfortable core of this whole thought experiment. Human dominance was never really about raw intelligence being unreachable by other species. It was about a head start, opposable thumbs, vocal cords shaped for complex speech, and about 6 million years since our lineage split from chimpanzees to build on every previous generation's discoveries. Take away the head start, and the outcome stops looking so certain. And here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. In some corners of the ocean and forest, the intelligence may already be closer than we're comfortable admitting. Sperm whales communicate using patterned clicks called codas, organized into distinct dialects that vary between family clans, the way human regional accents do. A 2023 project called CETI, the Cetacean Translation Initiative, backed by researchers at MIT and elsewhere, is using machine learning to try to map the structure of that communication, treating it less like animal noise and more like an unsolved language. We are, right now, in 2026, actively building the tools that might let us understand what whales have been saying to each other for millions of years. Nobody knows yet what we'll find, but the fact that we built a research initiative specifically to prepare for the possibility that it's something sophisticated tells you something about where the scientific consensus is quietly drifting. So what would actually change if that gap closed for good? Some of it might be wonderful. Working animals, guide dogs, farm animals, research subjects could participate in decisions about their own lives instead of having those decisions made for them. Conservation could shift from something we do to nature into something we negotiate with it. But some of it would force a reckoning we've spent thousands of years avoiding. Slaughterhouses, zoos, testing labs, pet ownership itself, the idea of one intelligent being legally owning another, wearing a leash. None of these institutions were built assuming the animals inside them understood their own situation. They were built, quietly and conveniently, on the assumption that they didn't and couldn't. Maybe that's the real answer to the question. It was never really about whether animals could become as smart as us. It's about how much of our world only works because they aren't. The dog at the door still doesn't understand the handle. The pig still can't tell you what it knows. And every day that gap holds is a day we don't have to answer for what we've built on top of it. Somewhere out there, in codas beneath the waves or bent wire hooks in a rainforest canopy, something might already be closer to understanding than we'd like to think. We just haven't learned how to listen yet.